Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Ridgey. I am the Executive Director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. I'd like to thank you all for joining us at our third Mayoral Forum, the Restaurant and Nightlife edition. So we've said it before, and I know everyone listening and tuning in or who will tune in agrees that our city's restaurant and nightlife industry is really vital to the economic foundation and also the cultural and social fabric of New York City. And it was extremely tough to run one of these hospitality businesses before the pandemic. But when the pandemic hit, which is over a year ago now, our industry has been absolutely devastated. We had about 25,000 eating and drinking establishments in the 5 boroughs pre-pandemic. While we don't know exactly how many have shuttered so far, we estimate the numbers are in the thousands. A report released by the Partnership for New York City suggested about 5,000 of these beloved businesses have already closed, and countless more teetering on the edge of survival. Before the pandemic, we do know that the industry employed about 325,000 New Yorkers in the 5 boroughs. Today, we're still missing about 150,000 of those jobs. And these are people that were employed that come from all walks of life. This is an industry that employs people that have college degrees, people that have just arrived here, may not even speak English. And historically, it's been one of those industries where you start entry level and then one day you own your own restaurant, you're the executive chef, you own a bar, a nightclub, and it's really why New York City is so special and really helps support the economic foundation. And as we come out of this pandemic, and we will recover because we always do, it's going to be very tough. It's going to be critical that our city's restaurants and our nightlife are at the core of the recovery, because it's not just our restaurant nightlife owners and the workers, but it's the whole ecosystem that relies on a vibrant hospitality industry. The upstate farmers where we purchase our produce from, the sales rep that sells us beer, the plumber that comes in and fixes stuff when something inevitably breaks in the kitchen in the middle of service. And the next mayor, who is going to take office in 2022, is going to be key in helping rebuild this industry and rebuilding New York City. So today we're bringing you the Republican candidates for mayor to hear about their backgrounds and why they are the New Yorker who is best suited to help rebuild our city with a focus on rebuilding the city's restaurant and nightlife industry. So a quick rundown of the forum is, first, we're going to get introductions from the candidates. Second, we have 6 questions that each candidate is going to answer, and they will have 2 minutes to answer. And then third, we just have a real fun kind of get to know you question, and then we're going to close it out. So for the opening remarks, we're going to have each candidate is going to be given 2 minutes, as I said, to introduce themselves, tell us about their backgrounds and why they think they are suited to help rebuild our city, rebuild our industry. And as we mentioned to them earlier, we're going to get into a lot of questions. So just focus on you as a person, as a New Yorker, and then we'll really get into your policy positions when we get into the question segment. For that question segment, we have a total of 6 questions, and we are going to have a restaurateur or nightlife operator from each borough join us to ask the candidates those questions. And of course, my colleague, friend, and co-founder of the Hospitality Alliance, Rob Bookman's also going to be joining to ask one of these questions. And we ask you to focus on them. These are questions that operators really want to know. And to start off, I want to bring the one and only, my dear friend, president of the New York City Hospitality Alliance, owner, chef of Melba's Restaurant in Harlem. She was born, bred, and buttered in the village of Harlem, as she says, Melba Wilson. And the order in which this question will be answered, first, we have
First, Andrew, the intros. Let them do their intros.
Yes, Curtis Wheeler, then Sara Tirschwell, and Fernando Mateo. But as Rob said, first, we're going to have Fernando come up, 2 minutes for an introduction, followed by Curtis, and then Sara. Fernando, please join us for your introduction.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm outdoors right now and there's probably sirens ringing around. I don't know if you can hear them or not.
It's authentic. We've had restaurateurs try to ask questions in the kitchen. So,
Okay, great. Well, my name is Fernando Mateo. And like most of you, I am in the hospitality business, have been for the last 20 years. And I know very much about what the industry is going through because I'm going through it myself. But as for myself, I'm a high school dropout. I dropped out of school when I was 14. I went to vocational training and I was adopted by a Jewish family who taught me the, the values of hard work and success. And that's what made me who I am today. At the age of 17, I started my first small business on Avenue A in the Lower East Side. I was married at 17 and I started my business and my career. I've been in business over 45 years. Never thought in 100 years that I'd be involved in politics because I don't like politics and I'm not a politician. On the other hand, I've done a lot during the last 30 years to help my community, starting with 1989, where I went to Rikers Island and I taught, trained, and found employment for first-time nonviolent offenders. In 1993, I did a disarmament program called Toys for Guns, where we were able to get thousands of guns off the city streets, thus making it an easy transition for Mayor Giuliani, who was coming in to fight crime. In 99, I assisted and formed the New York State Federation of Taxi Drivers
30 seconds.
to stop livery cabs from getting murdered. They were getting killed 60 a year, and we were able to bring that under control, working with the city, with the governor, and with the police commissioner. And I did the same thing for bodega owners in 2002. So I've been out there quite some time working for the democratic communities that basically need the most help. And as an urban Republican, I am running for mayor of the city. I feel that with the experience that I have in business, with the experience that I have creating jobs, creating opportunities, saving lives, I'm the perfect candidate. I'm the guy that can turn this city around. And that's why I need your support. That's why I need your votes. And that's why I'm going to be your next mayor.
Thank you. Curtis Sliwa, you are up.
Well, thank you. And in fact, knowing that I'd be appearing before the New York City Hospitality Alliance, it sort of harkened me back to a time, a great raconteur, bon vivant restaurateur, like many of you who passed away recently, Joe Allen. You know, we had Joe Allen's, he had Orso's. And for some of you, you remember when the Guardian Angels were called into Restaurant Row, Schubert's Alley, the Great White Way, Broadway, 1988, because the crack, the crime, the violence had caused much of Broadway to go dark and the restaurants to go dark. And Joe Allen, on behalf of those restaurateurs and theater owners, invited myself and the Guardian Angels to come in. And we took control of the neighborhood. We eliminated the crime. Clearly, it led eventually to the quality of life that everyone just accepted when Rudy Giuliani was elected mayor in 1992. But I sat in many of those restaurants and heard from both the workers and the restaurateurs their problems, the theater owners, the hotel industry. In fact, by being in Times Square, just 0.1% of the total land mass of New York City, I was amazed to find out, look at all the money that is generated, $5 billion alone for the city budget of $92 billion. How many restaurants and bars? 142. The hotel, 41. And then you had 46 theaters. And all these people were merging with one another to create this economic, cultural, and entertainment epicenter for the whole world. That was 1988 and it was going dark, and we helped revive it. Now look at it. Because of the pandemic, because of the rise of crime, the homelessness, the emotionally disturbed, 80% of the commercial space abandoned. So many of the workers not able to work in the hospitality industry, and owners and operators of restaurants and bars and other venues forced to leave. They can't pay the lease, they can't pay the rent. And I have some answers that I'm going to come up with, having experienced it in 1988 and having experienced the severity of today, in which a Times Square is empty at night. There are more people in downtown Buffalo enjoying themselves than there are in the epicenter of New York and through all the other venues in the 5 boroughs, and that has to be turned around.
Thank you, Curtis. Sara Tirschwell, you are up. Welcome.
Hi. So you guys know my name is Sara Tirschwell, and I'm running for mayor of our great city, or at least I hope to, because right now, Fernando Mateo and his political operatives are trying to knock me off the ballot. And here we are, ironically, with the hospitality industry, who desperately need help in knocking down some of the bureaucratic barriers to entry and earning a living. And Fernando Mateo is using the very same bureaucracy to remove me as a choice for Republicans in New York City. Anyway, we'll come back to that later. I moved to New York in 1989 from Houston because even though Texas is bigger, New York City is better. And I came to New York to work in finance. And when I started working in finance, you know, trading desks were rowdy, but if you put your head down and you worked hard, you could get ahead. That is no longer the case. Finance, like New York City government, has become an insider's game. And I'm running to change this paradigm. But insiders don't want that. And the Republican Party operatives behind candidate Mateo would prefer to protect their petty fiefdoms than to give their rank and file members the opportunity to vote for me. I'm not an insider, and neither are most New Yorkers. Most New Yorkers are struggling to take care of themselves and their families, and those struggles are the result of 8 years of failed leadership and backroom deals at City Hall. I spent my entire career in the specialized field of distressed finance, investing in troubled situations and turning them around. I honed my skills by becoming an expert in understanding root causes of distress and solving them, and by understanding how to forge compromise amongst angry stakeholders with different objectives. And the buck stopped with me. And speaking of dollars, our city is full of special interests that use the city as their piggy bank. That is called concentrated benefits with distributed costs. In other words, we are paying to protect the pockets of insiders rather than creating paths of, for advancement for our residents. We need to grease the wheels of socioeconomic mobility in this city, and that starts with small business, and small business starts with the hospitality industry. And New York needs a mayor like me who is not afraid to take on the sacred cows and is laser focused on turning this crisis into an opportunity to fundamentally change the death by 1,000 cuts way in which we do business and treat our residents. Thank you, and I'm excited to participate in this debate.
Thank you, Sara. Well, I got a little ahead of myself before, but now I will welcome back our friend Melba Wilson. Melba?
Andrew, if I may just say one thing, if possible.
Let me say one thing.
I thought we were introducing ourselves, not speaking about our agendas.
Fernando, let me say one thing. So we love a good political joust, but we really want to focus on the issues here. So I will let you briefly respond if you choose to in about 20 seconds. And then we just ask for the remainder, everyone focus on the specific questions. And then we may have more conversation in the future where there's some back and forth. But this is really an opportunity to hear from you.
I think
20 seconds.
I think Curtis might have something to say on the issue too.
So,
Andrew.
I think it's important. I think it's important, Andrew, that this panel listen to the questions, listen to the requests, and respond accordingly. They spent, both Curtis and Sara spent their 2 minutes speaking about their political agenda. You asked us to speak about who we were so that people can know us as people. So they basically took that and didn't understand what the question is. I've never met Sara. I don't know who she is. I would have liked to have heard a little bit more about who she is. And Curtis, I would have liked to know a little bit more about who he was, but they took the opportunity to discuss politics instead of discussing what you asked. So I would like to just make sure that we stick to the questions and answers.
Thank you, Fernando.
Fernando, let me respond to that. Because I didn't say
And
anything
then
about
I will just ask one thing, Curtis. You're free, please, 20 seconds to respond.
Okay.
And then I would just ask everyone, out of respect for the audience, we will focus just on the questions. But go ahead, Curtis. You were brought up.
My remarks were about my experience in Restaurant Row, the theater district, and what the Guardian Angels did to fight crime and revive the area, and what I will do as mayor now. But in reference to what Sara mentioned, she's absolutely correct. Fernando, you can't run from this. Your henchmen have tried to remove her from the ballot. She deserves to be on the ballot. She was the first to actually cite that she would run for the Republican nomination. She's raised more money than you and me together. And why are your people trying to knock her off the ballot? This is America. She's a woman. She's the only female candidate running for mayor. Shame on you, Fernando. Shame on your henchmen for trying to remove her from the Republican ballot.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that was everyone's opportunity to get everything out. I want to make sure that we get to the questions for what people tuned into right now, and I'm sure you will all have many forums to discuss all of these issues. But today, restaurant and nightlife. So Melba Wilson of the incredible restaurant Melba's in Harlem. Welcome, Melba.
Thank you so much for having me. And Andrew, just like any great recipe, this forum has a lot of salt, a lot of pepper, and definitely some spice in it. So,
Maybe some sugar, Melba.
I'm bringing the sugar from Harlem. I'm definitely bringing the sugar from Harlem. I want to say thank you so much, Ms. Tirschwell, Mr. Sliwa, and Mr. Mateo for being here. My name is Melba Wilson. I am, as Andrew said, born, bred, and buttered in the village of Harlem. I own Melba's Restaurant, Melba's Catering, and Melba's Mussels, which was originally slated to open March 20th, at the same time that the pandemic hit. So right now I have a space that's sitting there that I'm sometimes paying rent on, honestly, and sometimes not, because the space has not been open. I opened up my restaurant in order to provide jobs in a community that I absolutely love. 114th Street 17 years ago was not where people wanted to be. It was one of the most notorious drug blocks in Harlem, which is why I chose that location. I wanted to provide a change in my community. As you know, this year has been unlike no other year. Restaurants have suffered. You've seen people like me that literally started from the bottom lose their businesses, not be able to feed their employees not be able to feed their families. You've seen us suffer food insecurities at food pantries, getting food for ourselves. And we serve food, we're always around food. All of a sudden, we don't have anything to eat or to put on our tables. We haven't been able to pay the bills. You're looking at an industry that is the second largest private employer in this country. In the country, the food and beverage industry is the second largest private employer in this country. However, we're not treated like that. Whenever someone wants a gift certificate, whenever they want a donation, what do they go to? You go to your local restaurant, and 9 times out of 10, we're there for you. Again, I thank you for being here. So it's important to us that, being the second largest private employer, that we have a relationship with the next mayor, a hands-on relationship, someone that not just hears us, but someone who understands our plights. And right now it's been very, very difficult in this city to own and operate a business where the margins, if you're lucky, are anywhere between 4 and 10%. So those of us who get into this business, we don't get into this business for the money. We get into this business for the passion. I literally started out as a cashier in this industry and have been able to work my way up to now, as well as being the owner of 3 different businesses, being the president of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. So again, thank you for being here. My question, you often hear about how commercial rents burden small businesses, but in many commercial leases, the property taxes, which have skyrocketed over the years, get passed through to the tenants, like restaurants and nightclubs and bars. As mayor, what will you do to address property taxes placed on hospitality businesses? Thank you.
Thank you, Melba. And the order in which you answer the question, first we have Curtis, then Sarah, then Fernando. Curtis, you're up.
Well, Melba, appreciate your presentation because you represent what so many people are going through, not only in our city and our state, but also our country. But this commercial rent tax, when I'm mayor, there'll be a moratorium on that for 2 years. That's it. We've got to allow the restaurateurs, the bar owners to be able to get back on their feet, get open. When you talk about the permits, the licenses, the fees, same thing, 2-year moratorium, because all that's going to do is force more of your colleagues out of business. There are so many empty bars and restaurants right now that, well, we're going to have to repurpose. We're going to have to try to bring in new entrepreneurs. And that's why I have a right to business plan that will take men and women who want to start a business, try to repurpose them into the restaurants and bars that are closed here. And clearly, there has to be negotiations with landlords because landlords are getting hit with the property tax. So they passed it down to Melba and everyone else. So when you consider that 50% of the $92 billion budget is the result of property tax collections by the city of New York, well, the city's got to give relief to the realtors, the owners of the properties, so that the restaurateurs, the bar owners, and the hospitality folks can get relief also. So it's almost like you got to get everybody around the table. And most importantly, you got to say, ladies and gentlemen, we're all going to have to do more with less because the money is not there. And we can't be taxing people anymore because we're just driving them out of business. And many of them are fleeing our city, never to return again.
Thank you, Curtis. Sarah, you're up.
Okay. Hi, Melba, and thank you for that. I actually think that passion shouldn't be the only incentive for starting a restaurant in New York City. And that's a problem as far as I'm concerned. There also has to be a profit-making incentive or New York City is just gonna die and we cannot let that happen. I agree with Curtis. I think one of the things that's happened obviously because of COVID is that there's been this rent moratorium and this eviction moratorium, but we still expect landlords to pay their property taxes. And now the state and their state budget just increased the state income tax. So I think that what we need to do to demonstrate to the world that we are going to be more business friendly in the future is that we are going to have to actually lower property taxes for the next 2 years, the same period of time that the state income tax is going up. We're going to have to lower property taxes because we are going to have to incentivize people to come here and to take those vacant storefronts and use them because we need to restore vibrancy to our streets. That's going to be integral to solving crime. Crime fills voids. It fills voids in people's lives. It fills economic voids. And it's also part of the magic of New York City is being able to jump on the subway and meet your friend in a bar, downtown, and then, I don't know, walk to another part of town to meet somebody else at a restaurant, and then meet somebody for late night drinks up in Harlem. This is the magic, is that you get to have so many interactions with people that it creates magic. And the only way that can happen is if all these places are open.
Thank you, Sarah. Fernando, you're up.
Okay, Melba, like you, I'm also involved in the restaurant business. My wife owns Zona de Cuba here in the South Bronx. And she also owns other restaurants throughout the city. So the pain and suffering that you feel, we feel. And this is one of the reasons why I will be your next mayor, because I will focus my energy in making sure that our economy and our small businesses come back. We need to turn the lights back on in New York City. We need to make sure that we survive not just this pandemic, but we survive a comeback, that we can really have a comeback. I know what you go through when you've got to pay your rent because I do the same. I understand what your real estate taxes are because I pay them, unlike every other candidate in the that's running for mayor. They don't understand the pain and the suffering. They have ideas about what they can or maybe can't do, but we feel the pain and the suffering, And the situation that currently exists, I will change. I will change it so that we can survive. I will change it so that our passion becomes a profit. I will change it so that we can continue employing people from our community. I employ in just one restaurant about 150 waiters, barbacks, bussers, chefs, cooks, etc. But you know what? This pandemic has put a hurt on all of us. Landlords, I feel bad for them as well. You know, landlords are people that invest in properties. They invest in small buildings, hoping to make a return on their money. But if their taxes continue to go up, they have to pass it along. I will make sure that I lower the taxes and that I cap the taxes so that we can survive and remain in business.
Thank you, Fernando.
Andrew, can I respond to something quickly?
No, sorry,
about
no,
the
we're not doing
restaurant?
response. Sorry, Sarah, we're not doing responses during this.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Melba, thank you so much. Nice to see you. I'm going to move you to an attendee, and I'm going to invite Robert Bookman up. Hello.
I'm here. You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you and I see you. So Robert Bookman, as I mentioned before, our friend, partner at the law firm Pasetsky and Bookman, leading firm working with restaurants and nightlife, co-founder of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. Welcome. And I will let you know the order in which the questions will be answered. First, Sara Tirschwell, Fernando Mateo, and Curtis Sliwa. Rob, you're up.
Thank you. Can you hear me? That's something I never asked anybody in my life before this past year, where I seem to ask it all the time. I was always heard pretty well. Curtis and Fernando, you know, I go back to New York as long as you have. I started in the city government under the Koch administration. I started the New York Nightlife Association in the 1980s before we morphed into the Hospitality Alliance. We always appreciated everything you did, Curtis, to make streets safe so people can go out at night. And Fernando, watched every one of your press conferences when you were organizing your taxi drivers that we needed to be safe so that our people could get into the cab safe and get home, you know, late at night safe. And Sara, it is, on the other hand, it's a pleasure to have a new voice, you know, into this debate. Us old folks don't always know everything, and it's good to hear, you know, fresh perspectives. So I want to thank the three of you for joining us. We really appreciate it. The Hospitality Alliance has been a wonderful success story, and thank goodness for the industry that we were there when this started, so that there was a voice both in city and state government to help lessen the impact of this horrible pandemic has been on our industry. But now that we see, you know, light at the end of the tunnel, many of the old issues that have faced our industry, we're fearful will rear their ugly head again. So, you know, for example, going back multiple mayoral administrations, bar and nightclub owners have regularly expressed, you know, significant frustration with the way city government regulates and inspects them. They have often said the city treats small businesses like ATMs, you know, fining them first and worrying about compliance, you know, later. Tens of millions of dollars a year with fines. The different inspectors often coming in, providing conflicting information, you know, from one day to the next. Their permits and licenses getting stuck in red tape. Getting inspections in the middle of dinner service, or for nightclubs in the middle of a, you know, a popular Friday or Saturday night, just to turn on the lights to look for your permits, which could be seen at 2 o'clock in the afternoon just as well. So my question to the three of you is, as mayor, how would you reshape and reform the city government's permitting, regulatory, inspection process? How would you reshape how government interacts with us as small business owners?
Thank you, Rob. And Sara, you are up first. 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I did mention to tell you guys when I was talking about my background that my dad was a restaurant owner in South Texas. So we had several restaurants and an ice cream shop and a couple of hamburger joints as well. I mean, it's a meat heavy state.
No barbecue and no barbecue.
Oh yeah, no, we did Howard's Barbecue. Yes, right. My dad's name was Howard, and yes, that is true. So I think you guys I think everybody knows that in terms of the ease of kind of starting a business and operating a business, that New York City sort of ranks dead last. And I think that the next mayor is basically going to have to focus a lot of energy on changing that dynamic and making New York City business friendly, because we are now competing with every other city in the United States, and we have to start acting like it. I would appoint a deputy mayor for small business whose job would be to essentially roll out the red carpet for businesses, make it easier and simpler to do business here in New York City, and to have the Department of Small Business Services act as the one point of contact for businesses, because I think that that's a big problem. I think we need to consolidate oversight functions, and I think we do have to stop treating small businesses as if they are an ATM machine, and because finding them is basically pushing people out of the city. You know, it's like I said, death by 1,000 cuts. And we also do need to expand the small business first initiative, which was actually started under the de Blasio administration. And I think that needs to be expanded, as well as, you know, I think we have to think about financing too. And I think that's a much longer conversation. Okay,
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Fernando, 2 minutes.
Okay, like most of you, I feel the pain and suffering every single day. Every time an inspector comes to our door, I am saying to myself, what fine is he going to hit me with? It's city agencies are designed to put us out of business. City agencies are not our friends. The government is not our friends. We are the risk takers. We are the ones that provide jobs. We're the ones that create opportunity. We're the ones that take risk. I will protect our risk takers. I will make sure that if you invest in the city of New York, that the city's your insurance company. I will not allow for any city inspector to have the authority or the power to shut any business down. That's the only thing that makes me nervous every single day, because as hard as you work, as hard as you try to keep your business clean and safe for everyone, they will always come in and find an extension cord and give you 3 fines for an extension cord. They'll come in and find a faucet leaking, and they'll give you 3 fines for a leaking faucet. They come in at your rush hours on a Friday night, Saturday night, to disrupt your business and hurt you. Why? I would make sure that any inspection of any small restaurant or hospitality industry is done between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. before the business opens, so that if something needs to be corrected, it's corrected then, and your business is not disrupted. I will fight to make sure that I survive. And if I'm going to fight for me, I'm going to fight for every restaurateur and every business that's out there. I feel the pain. I feel the suffering. No one ever does that. I would make sure that our inspectors have body cams, and I would authorize every restaurant owner to record their inspection. And I would make sure that any inspector that goes out of line or abuses his power pays the consequences, because you know what? We suffer enough. It's hard enough to stay in business.
Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you, Fernando. And I could testify that those are real violations, he said, because I've defended those exact violations over the years.
Thank you. Curtis, you're up. 2 minutes.
Long before I started the Guardian Angels back in 1979, I was a night manager of a very busy McDonald's in the Bronx on East Fordham Road and Webster Avenue. So not only did I have to deal with crime outside, crime inside, but also there are a number of city inspectors who would come in when we would have a run, a major run. Lines would be out the doors, and they'd be checking at every little nook, cranny, and corner for a violation. Now, obviously, I wasn't the owner, but the owner-operators would get clipped and clobbered. And obviously, it would be a trickle-down effect on management and the workers, because there'd be a hell of a price to pay. So I've certainly personally experienced that myself. But on the other hand, there's been a lot of whining, dining, and pocket lining going on way back to the days of Ed Koch. And I got to give some credit to Ed Koch because he was a mayor that I would like to emulate in the fact that he would go to restaurants. He'd have breakfast, he'd have lunch, he'd have dinner. He lived in Chinatown. Wherever Ed Koch would go, naturally the cameras and reporters would go, because if we're going to open up the business in the industry, we can't be dullards like de Blasio and Cuomo have done, hiding out in their bunkers, doing their daily press conferences. You may have remembered de Blasio went to Chinatown. He wanted to buy ice cream for his staff. It's just a few blocks from City Hall. And a Chinese merchant came up who runs a bakery, asked him a few questions. The mayor turned his back on this man and walked away back to City Hall without even answering him. So there are a lot of things that need to be addressed. But when it comes to the health department, look, I've been in some places. I used to go to clubs at night, you know, and the only thing that kept them within regulations was a cat to keep the rats, the mice, and the rodents away. And then they would fine you because you had a, quote, a bodega cat, a cat on the premises. And remember, I love cats. I have 13 rescue cats at home in a 320 square foot apartment. It may not be large, but one thing we don't have are rats, mice, and rodents. And that's generally where a lot of the owner and operators of the clubs, of the restaurants, and the bars get clipped because of the presence of these pests.
Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you, Curtis. Rob, if you want to turn your camera off, but stay here because we're going to bring you back a little bit later. Next, I want to bring up David Burson, going to Brooklyn, Peter Luger. So David, I mean, you don't have to say much other than Peter Luger. I remember being there with my father the first time when I was 6 months old, and they still say I was there. I was gumming steak and some bread. And I've been there so many times over the years. I think the last time was this past summer when, just like everyone else, they had to pivot, doing some outdoor dining. And it's great to have someone that's a friend, iconic restaurant, to be joining us. So David, you're on. The order in which candidates will answer these questions: Fernando, Curtis, and then Sara.
Thanks, Andrew, and thank you to the candidates for taking the time. Best of luck in this process. Candidates running for elected office always have a long list of policy promises, but there's a big difference between campaign promises and enacting policy if elected. How would your administration's policies differ from the previous ones in regards to hospitality and nightlife legislation? And what makes you uniquely qualified when working with the state governor and legislature to accomplish these goals?
Well, first of all, David, it's a pleasure to see you and to meet you through this interview here. Peter Luger's is one of my favorite places. That's where I take my kids and my family, and I know all your maitre d's and everyone else. Like you, I understand exactly what's going on. I would make sure that, for example, you want to run a gas line, it'll take you a year to get a permit. It'll take you months to get a CO so that you, or a PA or a BAA. It becomes a job just to get something done in your restaurant. I would make sure that I would streamline that, allowing for plumbers and electricians and all of these people to self-certify the work that they've done, so that when the Department of Buildings inspectors come to your place, they only come to revise what was already done, but you've been able to operate from day one. Policies are what really have destroyed small businesses in New York City. These policies and these laws are made up by politicians, by lawmakers that have no idea what running a business is about. They've never, most of them have never had a private sector job, nevertheless owned a business. The pain and suffering that we go through, I live it every single day. So I know how to communicate our issues to government. I know how to explain it to them in plain language. Problem that we have is that they don't understand us.
30 seconds.
They don't understand our language. They don't understand what we go through. Me, when I am mayor of New York City, we will speak the same language. I know what you're going through, and I will know how to solve it. I'm a great communicator. I'm a great uniter. I know how to bring people together, and I know how to solve problems. So if I am mayor, or I should say, when I am mayor, next year, you're going to see a whole different city, and you're going to breathe a sign of relief, because that's what we need as small business owners.
Thank you, Fernando. Curtis, you're up.
You know, again, I hearken back. You mentioned Peter Luger's in Williamsburg. And I remember going there for a counsel one time from Mr. Rubenstein. His wife owned the restaurant at the time. He recently passed away, the PR guru. Boy, he was the best. And he said, you know, every restaurateur, every nightclub owner, every bar owner, people involved in the hospitality industry need their own PR guru and lobbyist, because there's a din. No one's listening. Now, I would disagree with Fernando on only one thing. Politicians know a lot about bars and restaurants. That is how to get everything on the cuff, because they walk in and they think they don't have to pay for anything, right? You know, it's sort of like you're there to serve them. They're entitled. So they come in, they enjoy the ambiance, and they just assume that you're going to pay for whatever it is they ordered for their party and friends. And obviously, that is your form of a gratuity. All of that is going to stop. Not only will there be a deputy mayor at night who deals specifically with the bar, the restaurant, the hospitality industry, and the club industry, but also all the crime. Because understand this, even if you resurrect and get everything back on track, who is going to want to go clubbing or jumping from restaurants to bars to clubs if it's unsafe in the streets and unsafe on the subways? And that's the priority of Curtis Sliwa. I've been doing it for 42 years in the subways, in the streets, and I will continue to focus on that as mayor, because if we don't refund the police, if we don't hire more police, if we don't let the police go out and do their job, we could economically stimulate your industry. But you're not going to have the customers who are going to stay late or stay till the wee hours of the morning, because it'll be Fear City again, like in the 1970s when I started the Guardian Angels. We're not going to go back to that era when Curtis Sliwa was mayor.
That's time.
Thank you, Curtis. Sara, you're up.
Okay, so I think I described a little bit about my approach to the hospitality industry in trying to create a more seamless process for the hospitality industry here in New York. And by the way, obviously, I love Peter Luger's. I've been there many times, and I actually keep lots of jars of Peter Luger's steak sauce in my refrigerator and marinate all my steaks in Peter Luger's sauce. So the problem is we have 6,000 regulations for small businesses on the books. And then we have the Small Business Initiative, which was created to help businesses get around these regulations. So we're creating regulations, and then we're creating another agency to help the businesses get around those regulations. Well, then why are the regulations there in the first place if we think it's okay to have an agency to get around them? So I think there are a couple of things that we need to do. We need to do a complete top to bottom review of all 6,000 of those regulations, because I am sure that some of them have been on the books for decades and are not really relevant today, but that people can use them to enforce things that can make a business owner's life difficult. And we need to take those down. We have seen what happened when we lifted regulation for restaurants during COVID, right? We allowed them to open up businesses in the streets. We lifted the law about carrying liquor around the streets, and guess what? Nobody died. So, I mean, I think we have to rethink a lot of our regulatory regime, and a lot of it has to do with basically getting government out of the way and letting the people in.
Thank you, Sara. Thanks so much, David. Good seeing you. I'm going to pass you back to an attendee. See you soon. And I'm going to bring up Mark Liu. We're going to head from Brooklyn to the Bronx. So coming on, Mark Liu's from Porto Salvo Restaurant in the Bronx. It's a great Italian restaurant. It was named number 8 best wine bars in the city by Time Out magazine. And now he and his husband, Luigi, are working on expanding the brand to more underserved communities. Good to see you, Mark. Thanks for joining all of us. And the order in which the candidates will answer questions is first Curtis, then Sara, then Fernando. Mark, you're up.
Thank you for all the candidates for participating in the forum. So my question is that many restaurants and nightlife operators and the community members have expressed frustrations with the community board process related to the liquor license and the community and the sidewalk cafes. So there's a lot of frustration with the community board process for many reasons, such as community board not being a representative of the entire community. So there are many local activists who don't like the change of any nature, particularly in Bronx here. So my question is, as a mayor, is there anything that you would do to improve the community board application and renewal process for all parties?
Curtis, you're up. Thanks, Mark.
Well, I've actually been to many community board meetings, and they certainly serve a purpose. But what's happened is you have to then hire a lobbyist to lobby the community board. So it becomes an additional expense, and the time that you have to wait for the community board to hear what it is that you'd like to do in their community and all the hoops you have to jump through is so unfair. This should be an easy pass process. And remember, you have a lot of men and women who are on community boards. Again, they're serving the community, but they haven't been elected. Basically appointees of the borough president, of the council people and others. And they walk around very, with a lot of pretentious ideas, very omnipotent. And they don't quite understand that there are people who want to invest in the community, who want to hire people from the community, who want to improve the community. And oftentimes they are like a stopgap. They're like a plug in the process. So although they exist, and there's been debates as to whether they should be eliminated. Remember, there was just a ballot initiative a while back. They serve a purpose, but too often they're an impediment. There has to be an easy pass approach, and you shouldn't have to hire a lobbyist. In fact, that's one thing I'm going to do at City Hall. I'm going to put a sign: lobbyists, do not cross this threshold, because I'm going to kick you and your tuchus and your dupar out of here. There's not going to be a need for people to have lobbyists in order to get what they rightfully should have. And especially if you go to CurtisSliwa4Mayor.com, the Right to Business program does not include having lobbyists, PR people, or having to wait months or weeks or years in order to get your permit, license, and approval to get up and start generating income and hiring people in the community.
Thank you, Curtis. Sara, you're up.
Okay. Well, I completely agree with Curtis on you shouldn't have to pay people. You shouldn't have to pay lobbyists, expediters, facilitators, lawyers. These are all of the obstacles that we place in the way of people starting and operating businesses in New York City. And this creates a situation where you have to have money to make money. And that's not okay. That gets back to my goal of greasing the wheels of socioeconomic mobility. And small business is a major access point for socioeconomic mobility. So we have to take down those obstacles. If I could wave a magic wand, I would make the community boards disappear. I'm not sure I agree with Curtis that they really serve much of a purpose. I would make them disappear. Obviously, I can't do that, but I think that I would definitely work to put another initiative on the ballot to do that and make the argument on behalf of everybody in the city as to why that should be the case and why that's actually good for everybody. And I will say that, my entire background is in, like I said, in distressed finance. And one of the skills that I have honed over the 32 years of being in distressed finance is the ability to bring people together to forge compromise. Because in distressed situations, you got a lot of people who want to get paid back.
30 seconds.
And they're angry that they haven't been paid, and you've got people with different objectives and disparate interests, and you got to figure out a way how to forge compromise. So I would hope to be the kind of mayor who would help forge compromise amongst a group of angry stakeholders, because I think that we have that in a lot of situations in New York City, like what you're talking about between businesses and their community boards.
Thank you, Sara. Fernando, you're up.
Mark, finally, you're going to get a response for the question that you asked. Like yourself, every time I open a business, I've got to come in front of the community board. I'm shaking in my boots. Here, I have invested hundreds of thousands and sometimes many millions of dollars in a business. And here's a community board that's disconnected and doesn't understand the sacrifice and the initiative that you're taking to create jobs, yet they have the right to decide whether you get a liquor license or you don't. I would stop that. No small business owner, no small investor, no one that wants to build jobs in a community should have to be put through the hands or the hold of a community board. Community boards should not be appointed by the borough president and the councilman of that community. Because if that councilman is in bed with your competitors because he's gotten donations from your competitors, he may tell, or he will tell his appointees, don't vote for them to get their liquor license. I would make it where community boards make a recommendation that has nothing to do with anyone investing in business. I will take the pain and the suffering that you and I have to go through when we go up in front of a community board. Community boards shouldn't be there to decide who's in business and who is not in business. That's not their job. Community boards need to get more involved with the business community, and in most cases, they are not. They're there to disrupt, they're there to hurt, they're there to inflict pain, just like the city agencies are there to inflict pain on us, the risk takers. So we need to make sure that we are the ones that have a commission to appoint community board members, and we are the ones that have, City Hall has the ultimate say on who's going to serve on a community board and who is not. It should not be the borough president, nor should it be a council member that is dependent on contributions in order to run for re-election.
Thank you, Fernando. Mark, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. And we'll,
Thank you, Mark.
Now we are going to Queens, and my dear friend, who I'm so happy we're going to get to see, Maribel.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Caracas, Arepa Bar. You have Williamsburg, right? You're in Queens. I can't wait. I just heard the beaches are going to open. So hope, I don't know what's going on recently, but I know there is some craziness out at Rockaway Beach, but I can't wait to get out to the beach and hopefully to see you. But, you know, again, you're another person that's like the quintessential restaurateur. Latina immigrant, small business owner, just all around great person. So the order in which the candidates will answer the questions. First, we have Fernando, then Curtis, and then Sara. Maribel, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Like Andrew said, my name is Maribel Araujo. I am Venezuelan, born and raised, moved to New York City in 2000. And we opened our first restaurant in the East Village that was sadly taken away by COVID. And now we're keeping Williamsburg and Rockaway on the boardwalk at Beach 106th Street. Curtis, I have seen you out there. And I feel very represented by my other colleagues about policy making. My question is more about how are you guys going to support us? Because being a mayor is not only about making policies, it's also about how are you going to treat the city as a whole in a very holistic way. Mayors can also host events and initiatives to help promote the city's restaurant and nightlife industry, which will be very important as our city recovers from COVID-19. A great example I want to bring up today is the late Mayor Dinkins, who created the first restaurant week back in 1992, which is still going strong today. And I have to say this year kind of saved a lot of us. What kind of events or initiatives would you undertake as mayor post-COVID to help restore New York City as the culinary capital of the world and the city that never sleeps. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maribel. Fernando, you're up.
Maribel, nice to meet you. Dominicano, inmigrante, y tú eres de Venezuela, mucho gusto. It's very important that we understand that being the mayor of the city of New York is a huge undertaking. You need to understand business. You need to know how to add and subtract. Public safety is right now first and foremost. We need to make our city safe. We need to make sure that we bring our cops and give them the lawful right that they have to protect every citizen in New York City. Our economy and small businesses are step number 2 for me. I will make sure that our small businesses are taken care of in the sense that if you invest in our city, I'm going to protect your investment. I'm going to make sure that our city agencies work with you to make it easier for you. Everybody is going to always have a minor violation. It's impossible not to. But it's not about writing a summons. It's about going in there and making sure that you rectify the problem, working with you, letting them become your friend so that we can fix problems and not destroy your businesses. New York City has a lot of public schools. Most kids that go to public schools don't eat lunch in school because the lunches they don't like. The lunches, the way they're prepared, how they taste, most people, they just don't like them. I would like to see a system that if there's a school in one location and you can draw a circle of one mile radius, you're able to give those restaurants, those parents, the right to be able to order lunch from those local restaurants and deliver it to kids for lunch. So you can order lunch from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from numerous restaurants. And I would do RFPs to make sure that our restaurants have other sources of income as well. I would do whatever is within our power, working with the city council to secure that anyone that takes a risk in the city, their risk is protected, their business is protected. And that's how I would be mayor, and that's how I would govern New York City.
Thank you, Fernando. Curtis, you're up.
The veins and arteries of the city is the subway. It's the way most average everyday people get around. So Maribel is there on Rockaway, the boardwalk, where there used to be Rockaway Playland. That was the big draw. Oh, Rockaway Playland, that was great. And then they took a wrecking ball to it, and it was devastation. But think of it, if they had a festival for 3 days, the last stop of the A train as you hit Rockaway, or in the reverse direction, Mott Avenue, in which you bring out the vendors, you bring out the restaurateurs. They're able to present their wares, what they produce, what they do, the club owners, and just have a festival that goes on for an entire weekend, and then culminate it with contests. So at every last stop, which is the veins and arteries of the city, you have these contests. And then El Grande contest is in Flushing Meadow Park. You have a World's Fair for restaurateurs, bar owners, club owners. And as being probably the oldest person who loves electronic dance music, I just turned 67. People say, you can't be into electronic dance music. Yeah, I'm a whirling dervish. Wouldn't that be great? That during the day, families can roam about, sample products from the winning restaurants, the winning bars, the winning creators, and then at night, have a huge festival and party of all the various music that is created locally and can be there for everyone to enjoy in a magnificent park right under the Unisphere, which really is a unification symbol with all the immigrants and all the people that we have living in this magnificent city of New York. It's just an idea I have, but as mayor, I would definitely push forward for that.
Thank you, Curtis. Sara, you're up.
Okay. So I want to just hit on something that Fernando said, which is this idea of RFPs. RFPs are a slippery slope. I don't want any RFPs. I don't want any more opportunity for sleazy backroom deals for New York City government. So no, thank you. I agree with you that school food is not good. I was on the board of something called the New York Coalition for Healthy School Food. I agree with you. There have to be other ways to deal with that. Crime is important. We have to deal with crime. We have to make people feel safe. We are well aware that there's a very high inverse correlation between police presence and crime. So we need to make sure that police are on the streets, are on the subways, and that people feel safe. Absolutely. That's kind of a baseline issue to getting our economy started. But you know what, Maribel, you are from Venezuela, and I spent a lot of time in Venezuela, and I spent a lot of time investing in Venezuela. And I can tell you that the reason why Venezuela is in the situation it is today is because it didn't reinvest in its greatest asset, which was oil, right? It didn't reinvest. It basically diverted the money and used it for other purposes and didn't reinvest in the infrastructure of oil. New York's greatest asset are its people. And we have to reinvest in our people, or we're going to go the same direction as Venezuela. Those are our greatest asset. And we have to make it easier for people to make money. We have to make it easier for people to live here. We have to stop nickel and diming people at every turn. And we have to have tourism, because tourism, I think, is vital to the hospitality industry. And again, that goes back to all these things are inextricably linked, right? Crime, education, the economy, all these things work together. And we need to solve all of those problems in parallel, and foster a middle class, foster a vibrant city where everybody is able to actually make money, take care of themselves, and eat out and go to bars and enjoy the nightlife of New York City.
Thank you, Sarah. Maribel, thank you so much. Good to see you. Hope to see you soon, and keep up all the great work. All right, so now we're going to Staten Island. Ted Nugent, where are you?
I think I'm here.
Another great person, owner manager of the Richmond Restaurant, New American Cuisine, owner of Casa Belvedere with our friend Massimo, who also did one of these forums with us earlier, and Chibu, which is in Brooklyn. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you. And I love on Facebook, the family photos and everything.
Well, even with everything going on, you still got to try to make time for family, even in this industry, as you guys all know. Andrew, thanks for having me. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'm actually downstairs on a low level of my house because my kids are all upstairs making way too much noise. So my name is Ted Nugent. I've been involved in the hospitality industry for probably well over 35 years. I too, like Melba and some of the other people on the panel, started very, very young. I've opened over 15 locations in Brooklyn and Staten Island in the past 25 years. I currently own three, as Andrew said. One is Cebu Bistro in Bay Ridge, which is open 20 years in 2 months this year. And I have the Richmond and the Belvedere Club. It's super awesome to finally hear people kind of recognize the importance of what this industry does for our city and how it's so connected to everything from what someone said, plumbers to handymen to the electric so it's nice to soundboard with you guys. So I appreciate you taking the time. Sara, Fernando, and Curtis, good luck. You guys got some city to try to put back together. Question today is, before the pandemic, there was a well-intended yet controversial legislation introduced that would require small businesses like restaurants to provide their employees with 100% employer-funded paid vacation, in addition to the paid sick leave, which we are already doing. As mayor, what would be your position on such legislation? 100% smaller employer fund mandates, and what will be your general philosophy and guiding principles on proposed labors that small business owners express concern about? Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. And the order is Sara, Fernando, and Curtis. Sara, you're up.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think I mentioned that New York City's unemployment rate is somewhere between 9 and 12%. So the very last thing that we can afford to do is to put more burdens on prospective employers for people. People need, right? Businesses need to operate. People need to have jobs. And by the way, the more restrictions, the more sick leave, the more requirements for paying for vacation, the less people are going to be employed. That is something that you certainly can think about doing when we are at absolutely full employment. Fine, then go talk about benefits. But at this point, we have to get people back to work, and we have to get businesses back to work, and so no. I am against all of that legislation. I'm against a sick leave. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, I know so many businesses who picked up and left. This was a pre-COVID problem. This is not just a post-COVID problem. This is a pre-COVID problem. Businesses were picking up, businesses that had 2 and 3 locations were picking up and moving and leaving New York City because they couldn't make a profit anymore under these rules and restrictions. And you know, the latest thing that de Blasio did, where he basically made it impossible for fast food restaurants to fire their employees just because. Now they have to fire them for cause in an at-will employment state. That makes no sense to me. Again, we don't want arbitrary, we don't want artificially contrived marketplaces for anything.
Thank you, Sarah. Fernando, you're up.
Okay. Ted, you and I basically are going through the same pain and suffering once again. I had an establishment where I employed 350 people. Our waiters were making amazing tips. Some waiters were making $700, $800 a day on tips. These waiters were making $8 an hour. When the $15 an hour rule came, we had to let go about 50 of our employees because we just couldn't afford it. Right now, when you continue to raise the minimum wage, you're not hurting, you're not helping those people that you think you're helping. You're hurting the job creators. You're hurting small businesses like you and I. We are not Google. We are not Facebook. We are not corporate America. We're not making billions and millions of dollars a year. Sometimes if we can make a few $100,000 a year, it's a lot. But when you pay back your loans and you pay back everyone you owe to get your business started, that you borrowed from to get your business started, you're left with nothing. It makes no sense. These politicians have no idea of what it takes to open a business because they've never had to meet payroll. They've never had to pay for an electric bill. They've never had to pay rent. They haven't had any of these burdens. So what they do is they do what they believe is popular. Oh, we want to make sure everybody's getting paid great wages. Guess what? Now they're unemployed because I couldn't afford to pay them. Now they have to find another job in another industry. Waiters don't want to get minimum wage of $15. They're happy to get $10 an hour or even $5 an hour because they're making $600, $700 a day on the weekend. Guys, I'm not angry. I'm not an angry person. I'm a passionate person. But I get upset when these policymakers, these lawmakers, create policies and laws that just hurt the fabric and the infrastructure of our city. We are small business people. We are not billionaires. We are struggling to stay alive. Why do you keep compounding the fines, the inspections? You know, building department. If you need a gas line in your business, good luck, because you're going to wait a year before the building department gets over there to inspect your job. Guys, we need to cut the bureaucracy. We need to get government out of our business, out of our lives. Government does not know business. I would make sure that I communicate with these lawmakers and hold them responsible for the decisions that they make. When they make them and it hurts and it puts our businesses and businesses like mine and like yours out of business. It just makes no sense. And I don't understand why they do it, why they're allowed to get away with it. If you don't understand something, don't rule on it. Don't have an opinion on it. Go to the experts and ask the small businesses, how do you feel about this? That's how I feel. That's how I would be. I would basically veto anything that has to do with hurting a small business. That's just who I am.
Thank you, Fernando. Curtis, you're up.
First off, when I saw the chyron there, it said Ted Nugent. I thought, oh, the Motor City Madman is participating in this New York City Hospitality Alliance. Wow.
But it's my dad.
But let me tell you something. You know, let's get to the nuances. City Council, I think it was Richie Torres before he became the congressman from the South Bronx, proposed a law that said that employees, you wouldn't even ask an employee to text or email when they're not working. And I'm saying, look, when I was a McDonald's manager, I needed people to be available on the fly when they weren't working. I had to communicate. Obviously, there was no texting and email, but it's ludicrous. It's crazy. But I just want to use your location as an example, Bay Street, Victory Boulevard. You know, there were many entrepreneurs who invested every nickel, diamond, penny they had into those small little cafes, bistros, restaurants. They were doing great. We came in and cleaned up the crime problem there because the drug dealing and the shootings was just off the hook, out of control. But they were able to get started. Then the pandemic hit. And I said to myself, you can, from that area of Bay Street, you can see Lower Manhattan and Wall Street. And I'm saying what happened in Bay Street and so many places around our city is what happened in Wall Street in 2008 when it crashed.
30 seconds.
And they all got free money. They didn't have to pay any interest. Remember, they said, oh, we use quantitative easing. What the hell does that mean? And I'm suggesting, because so many men and women have put their life savings into these businesses, and there have been some passionate presentations today. Why not loans at no interest? If you could do it for the big banks, the Fortune 500 companies who almost caused the entire world an economic collapse, and nobody went to jail, why not for the restaurateur owners, the bar owners, the club owners who have been devastated and never committed a crime that got them into the circumstances at their end? So what's good for Wall Street in 2008 should be good for restaurants, for bar owners and club owners in 2021. Money loans at no interest. What's wrong with that?
Thank you, Curtis. Ted, thank you. Good seeing you. Appreciate it as always. Say hello to
you, Andrew.
We will see you soon. So, all right. So we were in all 5 boroughs. We covered restaurants. We covered nightlife, covered a lot of important questions. So before we finish things up, I just have a little bit more of a fun question. Maybe we'll go Curtis, Fernando, Sara. Love to just hear quickly. Name a couple of your favorite restaurants, nightlife spots, you know, that you've gone to over the years, and why do you love them so much? Curtis?
Well, my favorite club is no longer open, Xenon. Any of you who ever were at Xenon, I mean, I could raise the roof over and over. But as you know, the life of a club, all of a sudden it attracts the clientele, it becomes hot, and then it becomes cold, and then all of a sudden there's another club. Mm-hmm. In terms of restaurant, actually, believe it or not, I love this pizza parlor restaurant right on Avenue A in St. Mark's, where I basically lived for a long time, Stromboli's. I just lived on all their culinary delights because at that time I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. I was living on St. Mark's, right across from Tompkins Square Park. In fact, Fernando put in my first carpet there. He did a great job, Fernando. I got to applaud you. That you laid some great carpet there. But that's what I lived on. And then I always go back to Stromboli's when I'm in the Lower East Side. Bars, I can't go to bars. I have chronic Crohn's disease now, and everybody always offers me drinks, you know, on the cuff. I can't drink, so I don't go into gin mills. Sorry.
Good. Thank you. Fernando?
Well, one of my favorite restaurants is Peter Luger's. I'm a meat eater. I love meat, and that's where I usually go. Bars, I usually just like to go to places all over the city, all 5 boroughs. Don't have a particular favorite one because every place has its own character, has its unique values, and I like to explore that way. Same things with clubs. You know, I'm not a big clubber, but when I do go out, I like to go to a place that's loungy, that's not very loud, that's not very rowdy. But I enjoy, you know, the nightlife. I enjoy the lights being on in New York City. One of the biggest concerns that I have is how New York City has treated nightlife, how it's treated the club owners and places that are open till 4 a.m. New York is about nightlife, and we need to emulate and we need to follow cities that make it work, like Miami. When you go to any club in Miami, there's a patrol car outside of that club with 2 police officers in it. And that club pays that police officer for their services. Because when there's a police officer outside, very few times will you have shootings and stabbings and issues happening. Now, the biggest problem that they face right now, or anyone in the nightlife business faces, is that if a patron leaves your place and gets into a fight 2-3 blocks away or a mile away, they trace it back to your business and they look to shut you down. They look to take your liquor license away when you had nothing to do with it. I would make sure that that doesn't happen. I will make sure that I follow and I copy those cities that make their nightlife business work. That's what New York City should be all about. It's about protecting its nightlife, making sure that it survives, and making sure that people in New York have fun. That's why tourists come here. That's why New Yorkers go out, because they want to enjoy themselves. Let's make it easy for them, not difficult.
Thank you, Fernando. Sara, you're up.
Okay, well, I actually agree with Fernando on that. Make it easier for everybody in New York. Make it easier to live here. Make it easier for tourists to be here. Everything. Make it easier for businesses to operate here. So some of my favorite places, I love the Red Rooster up in Harlem, but only late night. Only late night, because late night is when they open up the dancing downstairs, and that's what I enjoy. So
great chef. He's a great chef.
I know he's a great chef, but it's also down there. It's fun and it's funky and it's great. And then as far as other places, God, I almost go to a different place every night. The last place I went to was in Brooklyn. God, it's a little Mexican restaurant. I want to say it's called La Estrella. I'm not sure that that's actually correct. And I probably pronounced it incorrectly, Fernando. You could correct me on that. But I do like trying new restaurants. I tried one last night with my kids downtown called La Mercerie. That was terrific. This is one of the greatest things about New York City, is that you can eat a different cuisine every night. You can have a different kind of drink every night. My daughter just told me about, there's like a little sake bar, a little secret sake bar down in the 20s, where you go down like 2 flights of stairs to the secret sake bar, and it's almost like you're in Japan. All the secret kind of places that we have around New York City. This is what makes New York City great. This is the magic of New York.
Thank you. Well, before I make some closing comments, I want to invite Rob Bookman, who's here, to say a few words to close us out before I finally close us out.
Well, that was passionate, all 3 of you. I want to say it was a lot more fun than the other debates.
We are Republicans. We are Republicans.
Yeah, Republicans are more fun. Although with all the pain and suffering that Fernando has discussed, he doesn't seem like he has a lot of fun. He seems like
he's fine. He's fine. A Republican debate in a Democratic city is very interesting. I have to say, it really is interesting. I appreciate all your voices. Fernando, what you were talking about is, about Miami is called the paid detail unit. And when Andrew Richey and David Rabin and I, we started the New York Nightlife Association decades ago. That's one of the things we advocated for. The police department was always against it. They were always opposed to it. We think paid detail is a great way to make the streets safe and keep the number of violations down. Because there's nothing, private security guard is one thing, but when they know there's a cop, out there, it's amazing how many situations do not develop into fights. How many people who are leaving, you know, who had a drink or two, a young woman perhaps, is not leaving with the wrong person when that guy knows there's a cop there, you know, not just a security guard. So we're very aware of that. You know, we eventually produced the best business practices for nightlife for nightlife businesses that's been copied around the world. So I just wanted to thank all of you. There's so many problems, so much we need to accomplish, you know, for this industry in New York. You three of you know how we used to be not only the nightlife and culinary capital of the world, we were the live music capital, you know, of the world. No offense to Austin, Sara, but you know, so many clubs, you know, music clubs, and you know, it's just gone and are not being replaced with new ones. So many music styles started in New York. That's why I particularly liked your suggestion, Curtis, you know, about that festival. And if you don't get elected mayor, we will steal that idea from you. I guarantee you. That is an exciting.
You got it. Felony larceny. I charge you with felony larceny.
An exciting idea. But
you didn't ask us about our favorite music venue.
You think about wetlands, Coney Island High, Brownies, CBGBs. I mean, the list is endless of live music clubs, which were the music of their era. I get it. You know, it's not, you know, but their replacements are not there today. And that's because it's too expensive and too difficult to get a liquor license through a community board for a live music club. You know, I am one of those paid people, Sara, you know, that represents small businesses before community boards and the state liquor authority. And to go before a community board in Manhattan, especially now, and say, I want to do a live music club, they'll laugh you out of the room. There's just no chance of getting a liquor license approved. So I want to thank all of you for being here. It is meaningful to us because it wasn't that many years ago that nobody running for office really wanted to hear from small business owners. They thought all restaurant owners were millionaires. And so it's comforting for us, you know, that you're here. Your ideas are passionate. We really wish you the best of luck in your primary. We wish whichever one of you wins a successful or, you know, run in November. We hope to be in further communication with you. Please use Andrew, who is now, you know, a rock star. You know, he's been on TV so much. The union said he has to join and get a union card.
Yeah, but a rock star, even if I wanted to open up a club to perform in, it sounds like I can't get a liquor license.
Well, I'll get you one, Nora.
I thought Ted Nugent was a rock star.
That will all end when I am mayor. I promise you, and I will keep my promise.
And the only way you're going to be mayor, Fernando, is if you keep me off the ballot.
In the next six.
I don't even know.
Good luck.
I wish that you know, you need to get enough signatures to be on the ballot.
Good luck. I got enough signatures.
You didn't get enough signatures.
Yeah.
We started.
Not getting signatures, Sara.
Yeah, what are you scared of? You scared?
We started that way.
You gotta get the signatures.
What is wrong with you, Fernando?
Let me
ask you a question. This woman ran for the Republican nomination before you over me.
All right, so I have
to be on the ballot. She's raised more money than you and me together.
You've never been.
So I had to mute everyone. No disrespect. But thank you. You know, it's like you don't have to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here when they shut the lights at 2 a.m. or wherever it is. I just want to repeat what Rob Bookman was saying. We really appreciate you all spending time, your policy ideas, your passion. It means a lot. It wasn't so long ago, as he said, that people didn't really care, not only about small businesses. Maybe they say they love restaurants, they say they love nightlife, but often it's those same people that then get into office and enact policies to make those exact types of businesses, make it harder and harder for them to operate and not only survive, but also to thrive. So our goal of the Hospitality Alliance is to make sure we cross all party lines. We work with anyone who wants to work with us to make sure that New York City is the best place to operate restaurants and nightlife, be the restaurant capital of the world, the city that never sleeps. And for everyone tuning in, I want to thank you. We'll make sure this video gets out there because one of these three will likely be running in the general election against the Democratic candidate. So remember, June 22nd is the primary. It's going to be different because we have ranked choice voting. We're not just going to vote for one person. You're going to list candidates in order, and it's going to be an interesting year. So we want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the New York City Hospitality Alliance. Thank you to Sara Tirschwell, Fernando Mateo, Curtis Sliwa, all of our members and friends that tuned in, asked the questions, and we will see you soon. And let's keep fighting and let's get stuff done for our city.
Go to MateoTheMayor.com. Read about me. I am the man. I am the mayor, I promise you.
And Sara, where are people going to find you?
www.saraformayor.com. Sara, no H.
Great. And Curtis, I see you talking. I want to hear what you're saying, so I have to unmute.
Yeah, unmute him. I want to hear him.
He's a cartoon character.
We couldn't hear, but again, thank you all.
No, unmute. Let's unmute Curtis.
We gotta go. We gotta go, man.
We gotta go. Couldn't hear.
We gotta go.
Thank you again. We'll talk to you all soon. So long. Peace, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.